Okay, so this is our 9-patch square template, and we're going to need to cut on the black line with paper cutting scissors, not fabric cutting scissors. You want to kind of brace yourself on the desk so you can stay still. And so next we're going to put your name on the back. Your class period, and you're going to be using a piece of masking tape about that long, and you're going to roll it on itself, and then you're going to place it on the back of the card. This helps the template to stay in place when you place it onto your fabric to trace around it. Okay, so these are two different types of spools of thread. This one right here is what they call a channel lock. There's a channel right here and it opens up, and you would stick the thread in here, wind it in there so that it will keep the thread from unraveling out. And then this one is called a notch sort of lock or catch, whatever you want to call it. And so all you have to do is slide it into this notch right here, and that's how it keeps that one from unraveling. So what we're going to do next is the magic knot, and sometimes needles are so small, the hole, and we're going to zoom in to show you that the hole's really tiny, and sometimes it's really hard to get the thread to go through. And then he's going to zoom back out and so I can show you the hole, how to do the magic knot. If the hole is too small, the best thing to do is to put one of these threaders. It's a wire filament, and it slides through the hole of the needle, and then you would stick the thread through the big part. And so I'm going to get some thread here. You always do arm's length apart on the thread, and you cut on an angle so it makes it a little slender, and then you would stick the thread through the hole of the threader just a little bit, and then you would pull it back through, and it goes all the way through. And that's the easy way to thread your needle if you have problems threading your needle. Now you're going to match up the tails. This is how we're going to do the magic knot. You're going to match up the tails. Oops. And then once you have the tails matched up, they have to be perfectly matched up. All right, you're going to put you're going to hold the eye of the needle. That hole is called the eye of the needle, and you're going to hold it so that the point of the needle is up in the air. And you're going to hold the tails. You're going to have to kind of make like a smile, and you're going to give these tails, he's going to zoom in to show you exactly that I'm just putting the tails across the front of the needle and underneath my thumb. My thumb is going to hold them tightly, and this part that comes off the right side of the needle is going to go around the back of the needle 3 times. We're going to tuck everything underneath my pointer finger and my thumb. My thumb is still holding on to everything really tightly, and now this hand's going to grab the needle, and we're going to pull the needle out, which gives us the magic knot. Okay. As many times as you go around the back of the needle, that is going to give you a bigger needle, or excuse me, a bigger knot. And wherever your thumb is, when you press it, when you first put the tails over there, that's exactly where the knot is going to be. Okay, so this tool right here is called a seam ripper, and if you make a mistake, this is going to be able to go underneath a stitch and pull it out. So this right here, going underneath the stitch and ripping it out. This part here has a blade in the inside of this U, and it's able to tear out the stitches that you've made a mistake on so that you can re-sew it. This tool right here is actually a lot longer of a tool, and it's called a 1/4-inch seamer because it's a 1/4 inch all the way around rod. It's a plastic rod, and it helps us to guide us when making a seam allowance on all 4 sides of our square template. Okay. Okay, so this is my new iron. It's an automatic shut-off iron, so if it ever tips over, it's supposed to automatically shut off, or if it's left plugged in for too long, it'll automatically shut off. Nice feature to have. For us, for our purposes, we are going to be plugging it into the socket right here. And it has a green light that turns on that shows that the power's on, and we want to press this select button to go up to cotton because that's mainly what we're going to be using. Cotton is the highest setting, the hottest setting. It goes from nylon to wool and silk and polyester and then cotton linen. When the green button stops flashing, that means it's ready to use. So we'll let that turn on. And I will get the fabric ready. Also wanted to show you the reservoir of water on the side here. It's got water up to about here, and this is where you would put the water in. So this hole. Oh, there's the noise. It just went bleep. So now it's ready to iron. It didn't take very long at all. And I want to iron this fabric because it's quite wrinkled. So you're just going to go back and forth, and you can kind of see the difference of where there's no wrinkles to where there are all kinds of wrinkles. And if I wanted to do steam, I have an option to do steam as well. So it shoots out water and then steams it up. Makes the wrinkles go away even better. When you are done using the iron, you must turn it back to power off and unplug it from the wall. And that's it. Okay, so this right here, fabric we still need to what's called prep the fabric, which means to cut off this stripping. A lot of fabric has holes from where it was held onto the bolt when it was dyed, and so we want to cut that off because we don't want it to be part of the sewing project. So to prepare for that, we just need to take a scissor, lay it down on a flat surface, and start to trim away that excess trim that we don't need as part of our project. So you're going to cut it all the way off, the whole thing. Don't worry about being too precise because really you're just going to be utilizing every bit of your fabric as you possibly can. So okay, so this fabric is the same on both sides, and so this one doesn't have a wrong side or a right side like the other fabric did. And it doesn't really have much of a trim to cut off, but we're going to still trim it anyways. Here doesn't become part of. So whenever you start making markings on this fabric, you are, able to use one side or the other side. So we're going to start making our markings on the white fabric first. It's preferable to use something that with a marking tool that will go away, like chalk or something like that. But if you don't have that, we might get away with just using a regular graphite pencil. What I like to do first to keep it from sliding off the desk is to tape it down. So 2 pieces of tape, small pieces of tape will do to tape it down. Now we've got our square template with the tape on the back, and we're going to start in the corner of your fabric because we want to give enough room to make as many squares with this fabric as possible. We're not just going to take this square and put it anywhere because then we miss the opportunity to use all the space that we could possibly use for this fabric. So we'll put it up here in the corner, And we want to make sure that we have enough room for the seam allowance tool to go all around all four sides. And we have to go really light with the pencil, otherwise it'll bleed through. So we want to actually maybe test a little area where it's not going to show on the outside. If I do it that dark, it will show up. If I do it this light, it will not show up. See the difference? Can you see that? Maybe he can zoom in and we can see the difference. Okay, so I'm going to do it really light, so you just see the pencil barely. And we just trace the card, the template, and then we add the seamer around all four sides. Oop, that was a little dark. That's okay, because that's the outside cutting line. Okay, so now when I take the card away, I have a square within a square. The inside square is your stitching line where you're going to be putting your sewing stitches. The outside line is your cutting line, and I'm going to do that right now. So now we're going to cut on the line, keeping it flat on the table, cutting the outside square. And then there's this little tiny bit on this side that I still have to cut off. So when you're done, you should be able to see. You should be able to see the square within the square. That's the perfect size right there. And you do the same thing for your other fabric. And then I will show you how to put the two fabrics together to make the little pillow. Like this. We practice making the little pillow first so that we can make sure that we know how to sew before we start making the big pillow. Okay, so I stitched all the way around. I still have this much more to go, but I'm running out of thread here. I don't want to sew till it's so small that I can't even do a tie-off knot. So I left myself some room. I go around, no, I go around my hand, but you sometimes when it's smaller, you can go around your thumb, turn it and go in. So I go around my hand, turn it, go in through the hole twice, and pull, and it makes this little knot here. I don't know if you can see it. Maybe you can zoom in here and see that there's a little knot down there. Now if I start to pull, this little knot's going to ride up. We don't want that to happen. So you have to put your fingernail or thumb down there or something to hold the knot there, and then you pull, and now the knot stays right down there. Now all you have to do is trim it and rethread this needle with more thread, which I'm going to do right now, and I'm going to finish up this side here, and I'm going to stop when I get to my pin. I'll put my pin there so I can kind of remember that I got to stop here. I have to leave this much open so that I can turn this right side out, and then I can stuff this, okay? Okay, we're coming to the end of sewing the small pillow, and I'm just going to do my last few stitches to the pin and pull it through, and then I'm going to remove the pin and do my back stitch. And now I'm going to do my tie-off knot around my hand, in through the hole again, and pull my knot down here, put my fingernail down there and pull, and I can cut it off. And now I'm ready to open the hole up. I stick my thumb all the way to the back corner, and I take my pointer finger and I pull it through. And I poke out all of the corners till they're nice and pointed. Now eventually these little frayed edges right here are actually going to get tucked in to the inside, and at this point you might want to press it by putting those frayed edges on the inside and then press it with a steam iron. They will stay in better and be easier to whip stitch this closed. In the meantime, a lot of students think it's pretty difficult to get the stuffing in there. So you're going to use your thumb and just very gradually, just a little bit of stuffing at a time, you're going to take the stuffing and push it in with your thumbs and push with your finger, your pointer finger, you're going to push all the stuffing to the far corners first. What I failed to tell you before I stuffed it was that you need to make sure that there are no holes in the pillow first. So making sure that you've stayed on the sewing line and stitched all the way around. And I did. I don't know. At some point when we show you the video, we can zoom in on that and like pause it so that you can see that I stitched on the sewing line and that there was no holes left in the pillow. And that you check all that before you stuff it, because there's nothing worse than having to stuff the pillow and then realize, oh, pop, I have a hole here. We don't want that to happen. So, because then you'll have to take all the stuffing back out, fix the hole, and then redo it. Okay, this is pretty good. You don't want it too full, and you don't want it, with not enough stuffing in it. So I think we just need one little spot right here. Wherever you see a crease or dip in, that's where you're going to add a little stuffing. And I think this will do it. All right, perfect. Now we're going to stick those seam allowances on the inside so nobody sees them. And we're going to pin this shut, and we're going to do the whip stitch to close it. So pin goes in and back out, and then you put the other one in, same way. Pin goes in through both layers and then pops back out. If you just stick the pin in, it's not holding anything and it's just going to jab you on the other side. The good news is that I still have my needle that I cut off that still has a lot of thread on it that I could still use. So I'm going to do the magic knot. Again, give the tails to the thumb to hold on to, around the back 3 times, tuck everything underneath and pull, and then I'm going to trim my tails. And the last thing that I'm going to do is whip stitch this closed. So we first have to go in backwards through the hole, and we want to grab fabric, otherwise it'll just come popping through. Let's see if I got some. There we go. Okay, so those tails are right about there. I'll pull this out and straighten it a little bit more. Still tucking those in. Okay, so now if you can get in a little closer, this is like lacing up a baseball. You're just going to go through the back of the top 2 layers of your fabric and pull tightly, and just keep doing that really close to the last one, and just grabbing just a very small little bit and keep pulling. My little tails popped out. You can see them. I'm going to try to sew them down so you can't see them. Now some of you are so good at this that you barely can even notice that it's there. This is bothering me, so I'm just going to trim it. Yeah, some of you are actually better at this than I am. Okay, so I'm coming to the end. I'm just doing my last stitch to seal up and do the whip stitch. And now I'm going to do a tie-off knot around my hand, in through the hole twice, pull, and then I'm going to put my fingernail down there, hold the knot, and pull, and it holds that knot down there, and now I can trim it off. And there we go. All done. Okay, so this is the start of our large pillow, and what we did was we traced the template, and then we put the steamer around all 4 sides, and we made 9 squares of this fabric and 9 squares of your solid fabric. Now this does have basically a pattern to it where you have to decide whether you want it upright like this or like this. Because if you have certain squares in your pillow pattern going upright and then diagonal, it's not going to look right. So we have to make sure that we number these in a way that has all the design going in the same direction. So I'm going to change her numbers because they're actually not correct. You need to number 1 fabric with all odd numbers, so we will start with a number 1, and then this one is going to be 3, and this one is going to be 5, that one. And we're going to change this one to 7, and this one we're going to make 9. This one is going to be 11. This one is going to be 13. And she's missing 15 and 17. So she needs to make 2 more squares of this fabric here. And then let's see what's going on with this one. So this is going to be the even numbers. So we're going to start off with 2. Make this one 4. 6. 8. 10. 12. And as you can tell, I'm doing this in the seam allowance area in this little margin so that it doesn't show up in your pillow, because sometimes, well, not sometimes, if you write it here, that's the wrong place to put it because it might bleed through to the other side and then you'll see it on the outside of your pillow. So we're up to 12, and then 14, and then 16 and 18 are missing. So she needs to make 4 more squares, 2 of this fabric and 2 of this fabric. But in the meantime, we're actually going to start putting the pillow together. And the way we do it is we grab number 1 in the pattern, number 2, and number 3. You always stitch strips of 3 together. And so you want to line it up so that you have all of it ready to go. I also like to press it so it doesn't have these wrinkles, so it's easier to stitch together. And then you're going to take these 2 starting off right sides together, number 1 and number 2. You're going to take 2 pins and place them here and here, and you're going to stitch from all the way at the edge of the fabric all the way down the sewing line to the edge of the fabric. Even though the line's not there, you can follow the line out and draw it out like that, so that way you know exactly how to go all the way to the edge of the fabric. Then you're going to open this up, and this is going to be sewn together, and you're just going to attach right sides together, number 2 to number 3. You're going to make these strips of 3 for the whole rest of the pillow, and then eventually you're going to stitch the strips of 3 together to create side 1 and side 2. So my next video will show that part of it. Okay, so what we want to do before we start stitching our strips of 3 together is to press open the seams. It helps because once you start sewing this, you're going to have it be really bulky in these areas here where this seam is, and you want to make sure that you get the sewing done in that spot really well. So it kind of helps if this is flat to do that. So we're going to flatten these out. Some of your fabric, it might be a little difficult to do that because maybe these are too small, but you can actually fold it down then like this and press it flat also. But it's actually preferred to open up the seam and press them flat whenever you sew. That's what you typically do. So just open it with your finger, start getting in there, and press it. Perfect. Okay, so now we're ready to sew number 1, 2, and 3 to number 4, 5, and 6. And we do it by putting the right sides together and pinning it here, 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 and here. Okay, one of these is a little bit off. If you notice, one is a little bit bigger than the other, so we might have to accommodate for that and help her and fix that. Okay, so this is the thread that I'm going to put into the sewing machine. I thought I'd just show you what our sewing machine can do as well. To thread the sewing machine, there's a little hook back here. You're going to take the thread and hook it on the hook. And then you're going to go down this channel here. There's a little wheel. You go on the left side of the wheel. You come down this channel. You go up this hook, down this hook, down this hook, and then you thread the needle. Sometimes it's a little difficult. You just cut the thread off a little on a diagonal and put the thread to the tip of your finger, your pointer finger, and it should thread through pretty easily. Okay, so this is a bobbin, and this is the bobbin casing, I guess it's called. And you're always supposed to have the thread coming out the right side, not like this, but turned the right way. And you stick it into the bobbin case, and there's a little notch there. You're going to slide the thread through that little notch and around into this channel here, this channel here. And then it'll fall out if I turn it upside down, but if I grab onto this little, kind of a little lock, it keeps it from falling out, and you're able to stick it into the sewing machine, and it stays. If it's loose and spins around in there, then it's not in right. So this piece of thread here actually has to come up through the top here in order for us to sew, and the way that we get the bobbin thread to come up is we hold on to this one and we take this wheel that's over here and we wind it so that the needle goes down. See, when I move the wheel, it makes the needle go down. And then when I jimmy this and pull, it pulls that bottom thread up. See, it's no longer down there, it's now up on the upside. So that's how you thread this sewing machine. A lot of sewing machines are different, but this one's fairly easy. Now I'm going to put all the threads underneath the foot. This is called the foot. And back here is called the foot lever. It makes the foot go up and down. This foot basically takes the fabric and holds it. And then these right here are called the dog feeder, and they're little feet that kind of feed the fabric through, so it makes it easier to sew. All right, so we're going to start off by stitching number 1 and number 2 together, and we first want to pin it correctly. Here's my 2 pins. Okay, and then we're going to put it underneath the foot, and we're going to put it so that we line up where the needle comes down onto that first line. We have to catch fabric, otherwise, like I said, it's going to jam up in the inside of the casing. So now I'm going to press the gas pedal down here below. I call it the gas pedal, really it's just the foot pedal for the sewing machine to give it juice. So we're going to start stitching, and over here, this right here, if I pick it up, it makes the sewing machine sew in reverse. So right now we're sewing forward. When I pick it up, it sews backwards. That's called a back stitch, and when you start sewing, you need to do a back stitch at the beginning of sewing and a back stitch at the end. It's not like hand sewing where you have to actually do a back stitch every 4 stitches. This one you just have to do a back stitch. It's kind of a locking stitch at the beginning so it doesn't unravel, and one at the end so it doesn't unravel. When you get to a pin, it is recommended that you pull the pin out so you don't wind up running over it with the sewing machine. Now you're driving down the road right on the sewing line. You're letting the sewing machine just feed it in. Pull out the pin when you get to it. And when you get to the very end, again, you grab this here and you want to do a couple of back stitches, a couple of forward stitches, and you're done. You'll lift up the lever, the foot pedal, and then you'll kind of just shimmy this out a little bit. And we want to give it some slack, because if I cut it like this, everything is going to snap out and then you'll have to rethread everything. We don't want that to happen. So give it some slack, cut it really close to the fabric, and also trim off the left side. And how did I do? I did great. Okay, so the next thing that we attach will be number 3, and this one right here is number 3, making sure that the pattern again is upright and correct. The right sides together. And the 2 pins that I pulled out, I'm just going to grab them again. You can essentially make one of these large pillows in literally an hour. From measuring to sewing with a sewing machine, you can make a pillow in an hour, or at least I can. Anyhow, again, you press on the gas pedal, you do a couple of stitches forward, a couple of stitches backwards. I don't know if you guys noticed, but I put these threads again towards the back. It's so that we don't tangle them up and get them all running on each other. And I'm just going to go a little faster. And if the needle is still down at this point, you want it to actually, because you can't get your fabric out, you need to roll the wheel up, and then you need to shimmy it out. Doing the same thing, giving it some slack, cutting off the threads on either side. And now we are done with a set of 3. We put this aside and we do these sets of 3 until the whole, all the sets of 3 are done. Okay, so as I said, we're going to pin these, so you want to really line up these corners properly so that they'll have it, so the pattern will match up really well. Put the pin in here, and you also want to line up this one evenly, and a pin here, and this one is really off, so I don't know what we're going to have to do at the end to fix this, but okay, so anyway, we're going to start here. I'm going to stitch all the way down, and of course taking out the pins when we get to them. When you get to this, you want to lay it down, and again we're going to take the pin out so we don't run over it. And then we're just going to cut it off. We'll trim on this side, or the threads on this side. And then when we open it up, this is the side that we see on the outside. Okay, it's a little bit off, and that's because her squares are kind of, one's bigger than the other. So we're going to trim this a little bit to fix it. And then we're going to turn it over, and we're going to add her next 3 in the sequence. So that will be up here, it'll be another yellow zigzag, another gray, another yellow zigzag, and this side will be done. Once you do both sides, you will put both sides together, pretty sides facing each other, and you're going to stitch all the way around. Okay, so now that we have both of our sides done, we want to put the right sides together, and we want to make sure that the pattern is also going in the correct direction. If we turned this way, this would match up on both sides of the pillow. So we have to make sure that the pattern is correct on both sides when you connect it. And then you're going to take pins and you're going to pin in all of your special corners that you're going to be working on. So we're going to start over here and stitch up. But what I wanted to tell you is there's 2 ways to close this. You could either leave this square open or this square open. A lot of students tell me that leaving the center open is actually easier to stuff the pillow, and it keeps it from popping the seam on this side. So I am actually going to start sewing where they said it would be a good idea to sew. Everything should be pressed flat so it's easy to stitch over, and you're stitching actually on the sewing line, not on the edge of the fabric, but on that sewing line, and that goes all the way around the pillow, and you're going to stop when you get to here. And I'm going to do it with the sewing machine, and so I'm going to bring in the sewing machine here so that you'll be able to see how this gets done. So for this, we're going to start right here. Put the foot down, put the needle down, and I'm pretty experienced, so even though I don't have pins, I'll be okay. But you should have pins in yours so that it doesn't move on you when you're sewing. So we're going to do a couple of stitches forward and do our back stitch again, a couple of stitches backwards. That's my tie-off knot, the beginning of the fabric when we sew. And then we just sew down the sewing line. When we get to a corner, you go down with the needle into the corner and you lift up the foot and you do what's called a pivot. You pivot, and then you put the foot back down, and now it's ready to start stitching straight away on this line, this side. And of course, you're all doing this by hand, so it's going to take you a little longer than it's taking me, but I'm showing you this for the experienced sewers that may want to use the sewing machine instead of hand sewing it. And then we get to the corner again, we get to the line, and then we put the foot up and pivot. And then we match up these sides, just making sure everything is lined up correctly. She did pin this one. I'll move that to fit better. Sometimes I go too fast and I wind up stitching it all the way closed, so we have to really be kind of focusing on making sure that doesn't happen. And this looks like, okay, this looks like the side over here that's going to be left open, so I just have to stitch all the way down into here and stop. So that's what I'm going to do. Take the pin out. So we're some pins in here. Last pivot. Line it up. Back stitch, forward stitch, back stitch, forward stitch, just to make it a little more reinforced here at the corner. Pick up the foot and shimmy it out. Give it some slack. Trim off those and trim off these. And now when we open this up, we got this square here. You're just going to stick your fingers in here to the farthest side, grab this, stick it through, turn it right side out. You're going to poke and pull and make sure nothing is got any holes in it, especially here at these corners, everywhere you see them connected. And you're going to poke out the corners so they're nice and pointed. This part right here is really important that you do, because what happens if you don't do this and you just think you're all done and you're going to put stuffing in it, is then you'll put the stuffing in it, you'll whip stitch it closed, and then you'll notice there's a hole and have to take everything apart. So before you have to do anything like that, this is the precautionary step that you need to take. So now this pillow, all it needs is stuffing and a whip stitch closed. Still putting the seam allowances on the inside, tucking them in like that will keep all these frayed edges from showing. Okay, so we finished stitching together our pillow, and we turned it right side out, and we poked and pulled and made sure there were no holes in it. and there aren't. We did a magic knot, and now we're cutting off the tails to make them just a little shorter. This is, the magic knot is for the whip stitch that you're going to be doing. So now that we've got our, this is the opening right here, you're going to take all the stuffing and put the stuffing in the back, in the corners farthest away from you first. So you're just going to kind of take stuffing and keep filling the pillow up. Sometimes it's a little difficult to get it in. It's going to take a lot of stuffing to fill these pillows. Wherever there's creases, you want to stick stuffing over there. You don't want to overstuff this, but you don't want to understuff it either.